Hello, everybody. Welcome to Answers Special Education Today for September 6th, 2023. I'm Kevin Daly for PATH. In this edition of Answers, there will be an update on the latest in the schools, and that'll be done by yours truly. Bryan Gresko from the Connecticut Department of Developmental Services will join us to talk about Project Search, which is a new program for young people who are transitioning to adult life. Returning guest Bryan Klimkiewicz, Director of the Bureau of Special Education, will join us for an update from the State Department of Education. As always, there will be time for chat with our guests at the end. Get ready to click or tap if you have a question. And don't wait until the end. If you have a question, send it on over. Answers is brought to you by PATH, a nonprofit organization that served Connecticut families for over 35 years. If you have questions about this webinar, please contact me directly at kdaly@pathct.org. While you're online, be sure to check out our website. We're also on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. On the PATH YouTube channel, you can find all our prior webinars and lots of other useful information. This webinar is not to be regarded as legal advice or healthcare advice. And while we encourage you to share the links of our videos, this webinar remains the sole property of PATH. Here's the school update for September 6th, 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, summer is over. I know the real end of summer isn't for another 16 days, but as far as school is concerned, summer break and Labor Day, they're in the rearview mirror. Summer's over. This year, a lot of the weirdness we saw at the start of the previous years has disappeared. Extreme steps that were taken to protect the health of students and teachers seem to have faded. This year, it seems public schools are simply dealing with the usual chaos that occurs at the beginning of any typical school year, like school bus problems, class scheduling problems, etc. The weird stuff may have faded, but some big problems do remain, problems that are having a negative effect on all students. And as it's often the case, these effects are magnified for special education students. The shortage of teachers and staff is one of the greatest concerns this year. Teachers and staff shortages are affecting school districts throughout Connecticut and throughout the nation. It's a shortage of general education teachers, special education teachers, related service providers, and para-educators. These days, even finding enough school bus drivers is a challenge. How bad is it in Connecticut? As the Hartford Courant reported recently, the data on this year's shortage won't be available until later this fall. But at the end of the school year last year, there were more than 2,600 unfilled teacher and para-educator positions across the state. School districts across the country are going to great lengths to deal with the crisis. Proposed solutions include larger classes, shortening the school week to 4 days, emergency programs that make it drastically easier to become a teacher and also tend to produce underqualified teachers. School districts in some states are even recruiting custodians and lunchroom workers to work as teachers. Moves like this will have a significant impact on all the students in a school. But how does it affect special education students? Special education students typically need lots of individual attention in order to succeed. This is pretty much the concept behind special education. The appropriate level of individual instruction varies for every special education student. But by definition, every special education student needs a greater degree of individualized attention than their typical peers do. When special education students get the appropriate level of attention from teachers and staff, they can do quite well, sometimes better than their typical peers do. Conversely, when special education students don't get enough individualized attention, say in a large classroom, for example, they don't achieve as well. There are many, many special education students who tend to get lost in the crowd in a large group setting. Underqualified teachers pose another set of problems too. Our children learn best with teachers who are highly qualified professionals who have lots of experience. Some states have come up with teacher certification programs that drastically short circuit the path to a classroom. I don't mean programs that give future teachers credit for their previous experience and knowledge. That's legit. There's a program like that at Charter Oak State College in New Britain. What's not legit are the programs that drastically lower the bar and allow underqualified teachers to get into classrooms. And many states have programs like that. Fortunately, not Connecticut. They attract people from all walks of life, like military personnel, even members of the clergy. Here's another part of the problem: subs. When there aren't enough teachers to go around, it creates an over-reliance on substitute teachers. In Connecticut, a teaching certificate is not required for subs. A bachelor's degree is required, although a school district can apply for a waiver to allow people who don't have a bachelor's degree to act as a sub, to even substitute for a special education teacher, a very highly trained specialist. The requirements for long-term subs are a bit higher, but the bottom line is this: our children's highly qualified teachers are increasingly being replaced by less qualified substitutes. This does not bode well for special education students. There's a shortage of para-educators that's affecting special education students too. As reported by WFSB recently, Connecticut schools are short about 1,300 para-educators. These are the folks who sometimes work more closely with our children than their teachers do. Last year, the shortage of para-educators made it difficult for schools to live up to their IEP obligations, and the shortages continue. Although it's not like we didn't see it coming. Back in July, the State Department of Education identified an expected shortage in these 11 areas. And you see special education and school psychologists are marked with a star. That's because those folks are the stars of special education, and they're critically important to our children. What's being done to address the shortage of teachers and staff? Well, you can't say they're doing nothing. There are programs that offer mortgage assistance to certified teachers. There are initiatives to rehire retired teachers and to attract teachers from out of state, too. There are plans to make student loans for future teachers easier to repay, even canceling the debt completely in some cases. Then there are the alternate routes to teacher certification, like Charter Oak College. And the state recently started a new program to help para-educators with their health insurance costs. Will steps like these produce long-term solutions? Only time can tell. Things move slowly in education. For now, it's important for parents to understand the credentials of the teachers and staff who work with their child. And parents, you do have the right to ask about that. So don't hold back if you feel you need to know. Bryan Klimkiewicz is coming up in the future, but next, Bryan Gresko is going to join us, and Bryan's going to talk about a new program, Project Search. Bryan, welcome
Sure.
to Answers.
Thank you for having me.
Project Search, what is it and who is it for?
Fair enough. Project Search is an internship program for individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities who are interested in gaining skills that can lead to competitive integrated employment. The program is geared toward individuals who are in transition age school programs. So, typically 18 to 22 through age 22 at this point, as well as young adults. By young adults in Connecticut, that means they're typically connected with the Department of Developmental Services. So if you're in either one of those catchment areas, Project Search could be an option for you. Um, each program runs for 9 months and roughly follows a calendar similar to most public school districts. So you're September to like end of May, early June. Programs generally consist of an agency that holds the license for the program, and they provide qualified and trained support staff, and as well as a host business where the entire program takes place. Host businesses ideally have a large number of employees in various departments. During the year, each intern goes through 3 10-week micro internships called rotations. So having varied options for departments is needed to make sure interns get the experience with multiple skill options. Um, Large businesses like hospitals and universities are typically ideal settings for project search programs, but they do come in many shapes and sizes. And I'll just say, for example, in Connecticut, there are actually 2 project search programs that are located within YMCA's. So I like to call them our boutique project search programs, but they're smaller. But even at YMCA's, they have a whole host of different departments to choose from. Regarding the internship rotations, I should mention the interns are not clustered. Other programs where they have 3 or 4 interns in the same department or the same workspace doing the same work, that's not reflective of what Project Search is about. Each intern will have their own assigned department for their rotation internship, and they'll receive instructions and class time at the beginning and end of each day, but the majority of their time is immersed in that internship department. So depending on the program, work skills development options can include anything from clerical work, patient care. Uh, we have folks that work in the maintenance department, childcare, retail, environmental services. We've actually had an intern last year who was trained in electronic health records at a hospital, which was pretty exciting. So the options are varied and can give the intern a sense of future interest in their career path. Um, Many project search host businesses do hire interns, but that's not necessarily an expectation. Project search staff will help the intern job search with the goal of finding competitive employment by graduation from the program. In the event that an intern does not find employment by then, Project Search will stay on for at least 6 months to continue job searching and development. Uh, I would say overall, which Project Search has very strong numbers in terms of helping their interns find employment. Uh, Project Search is in 48 states as well as several other countries. They have right around 750 programs altogether. With that many programs in play, they still managed to have consistently reach benchmarks of just around 75% of the interns each year finding employment, competitive employment. In Connecticut, our numbers are even better. Over the last 5 years that we've reported out, we've been right about 80% of our interns have found employment upon completion of the program.
Bryan, I just wanted to make sure I heard something you said correctly. I get the impression that participants in this program are not, for lack of a better word, segregated into working in areas with other participants. They're more inclusive approach, gets the participants working with the typical folks on the workplaces. Am I right about that?
Yes, and so what you find with with the interns is a lot of times I'll say people tend to think, oh, an ideal candidate for the program would be somebody who's walking in the door being very independent. That's not necessarily the case. Um, what the program is designed to do is to nurture independence. So there are interns that start off the program that might need a lot of support, but as they're being brought out into their own internship in their own department, building their own natural supports, learning their jobs, the skills and the things that they need to progress into employment. We found that they've by and large they typically blossom, and the intern that walks in on day one is not the same person walking out at the end of the graduation. And we've had interns that have come out and spoken at about their experiences to conventions of over 200 people, and their parents have come up with tears in their eyes, being like, I never thought my son could do that. And it's just so empowering to watch that development. So that's what Project Search really builds upon. I think that's what kind of separates it from other programs, is that push towards independence.
That push towards independence is important, especially in a transition program. Um, just because of the way our system is set up, our children, by the time they're ready to make the transition, they're very good at following directions, but coming up with ideas independently and executing them independently, that's the soft white underbelly that too many young people have when they go on to life after
Yeah, and
youth.
the interesting thing about Project Search as well is it's not just one internship. You're not just going in and you're signing up for one following one job for 9 months. You have at least three different uh, micro internships, and the intern has a great deal of input about what they want to pursue, what they might be interested in. They might be challenged to try something that they might not think they're interested in, but they the point is that they're getting an eclectic, uh, like a, a, they're getting a varied experiences. So they're learning more about themselves than if they were just performing one task in one setting. They're learning how they perform in different settings. Some settings in internships are more fast paced, or they might have different requirements than others. And so they walk out with a better sense of what they're looking for employment than they would be when they're walking in.
I see. So let's say I have a young person at home, a youth who is still under the care of the school district until their 22nd birthday, but they're not 22 yet. Uh, how would I get my young person involved in Project Search?
Sure. So project search programs are recognized by state ed as transitional vocational certified programs. They're on the state ed website. So we would encourage anyone who's interested in pursuing project search as an option to have those conversations with their school district, in their planning teams within their school district. If there's questions that the school district might have about project search, I work for Department of Developmental Services and Employment Day Services Division, but I also serve as a statewide coordinator for project search. So regardless of anyone's attachment to DDS, if you're interested in project search, feel free to give me a call, reach out to me, and I'm happy to sit in and provide education for school districts, for families, for advocacy groups, whomever might need to have a conversation about project search. So I'm certainly available to assist in any way as possible, any way as well.
Excellent. So let's say my young person has applied and been accepted at Project Search. Does it take one place 100% at the workplace, or is there more than one location typically?
Everything takes place at the host business. So I'll give you an example. We have a work site at Middlesex Hospital. So a typical day, what would happen was the interns will all arrive about 8:30. They'll do about 45 minutes of class instruction. So they'll receive curriculum, they'll plan out their day, they'll receive supports from the staff that are supplied by the agency. So in this case, it's Mark Community Resources. They supply the support staff. And then the interns, they disperse. They go to their assigned work areas, their assigned departments, and they're out there. And the expectation is that they're completely immersed in that department. They're providing, they're gaining skills, and that they're part of the team in that department. So in so far as much that breaks, lunch, like they don't group back together for lunch. You have lunch with the folks in your department, whoever your colleagues are, your coworkers. So they don't regroup until the end of the day, and then they'll meet with their staff, kind of any kind of follow up that they might have, any additional curriculum, and then setting up for the next day. Back.
Welcome back, Bryan.
It wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without somebody getting disconnected. I don't know why we lost me, but they are fully, the entire program takes place in the host business. The vast majority of the day takes place in their individual internship in their own department. And that's the typical day. And then they receive, like I said, they receive supports from the agency staff. And aside from the day-to-day component, they're also building and planning out, mapping out what the internship's going to look like, as well as planning for employment in the future.
And the staff that's there for supporting the interns, what kind of training does the staff have?
They are trained in project search, so they have to go through a full curriculum of their own in order to be part of the program. Most of the programs that serve transition age, school age youth, there's typically requirement to have a certified special ed teacher. That's something from Project Search National that they want that. We do have a few programs that only serve adult population, so that's not a requirement, but every program does go through very vigorous Project Search training. And Project Search is from their national team. They are, I'll say, dogmatic about their expectations in terms of fidelity to their model.
Well, excellent. So yes. Oh, please continue.
Oh, yeah. So your typical Project Search program will have a certified teacher and then a skills instructor kind of accompanying them. So it's usually that kind of tandem.
That would be very helpful on the job at the workplace. So this is a great program. Bryan, is there anything else we should know about it?
I think I covered just about everything. And again, I certainly look at this as an opening of a dialogue for anyone who's interested in learning about Project Search. I'll make all my information available, and feel free for anyone who's interested to reach out to me at any time.
Well, I did want to ask about that. Are you willing to give a presentation about Project Search to parent groups, school groups, that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, excellent. Those of you who are involved in parent support groups should keep Bryan in mind. Bryan, thank you very much, and good luck to you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and at this point, I'd like to call in Bryan Klimkiewicz.
Hey, Kevin.
Hi, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back. Happy 2023 school year.
Yes.
It's going to be a great year.
It sure will be. So a lot of things were new last year. from the Bureau. I think the new IEP form, which wasn't exactly brand new, but new enough for parents to certainly take notice of it. What is there anything new with the new IEP form that parents should expect to see, and with CT SEDS in general?
Yeah, we had an enormous change process in place last year with the introduction of our new IEP template. And so, there was a great effort amongst the CSDE and our partners to provide resources and training and information to support the understanding of the new IEP. And so we are continuing that into the second year of implementation. We had a slow rollout last year transition, which means that as students had their annual review planning and placement team meetings, the districts were required to utilize the new template and the new form, which was based in the system called CT SEDS, which is short for the Special Education Data System that we now have in place. And so throughout the year, we've been tweaking and refining the system and providing enhancements to improve the user's experience with the program. It's a very different program than our districts were used to. Most of our districts were used to more of a form-based system, and CT SEDS is a process-based system, if you will. So throughout that process, the IEPs are generated, and like anything else, change is very difficult and hard, but we've really worked together to get to a point to start this school year where we see great improvement. As far as the document and template itself, there are not any substantive changes that the parents should be aware of. What I really wanted to do is to make sure parents had access to our overview of the new IEP. It's a 5-minute video that is very nicely done that describes the new IEP and the different sections of the IEP for parents. We have a version in English as well as Spanish. But one of the exciting components of this new system is the new IEP document, and any of the documents that are generated within the system are translatable into the top 10 languages in the state, which is really a nice accommodation and a provision of accessibility that the system provides.
I see. I remember the days when I was a rookie advocate when IEPs were written by hand.
Yes.
And using the carbonless forms, where you had to press really hard to get to that bottom form, which is the form that typically parents left with. So
Absolutely.
With CT SEDS and the template for parents,
Yes.
In talking with school people over the past year or so, I've had the impression that what parents see in the CT SEDS system is really just the tip of the iceberg. And for school people, it's a lot more involved. Am I right about that?
You are, yeah. What the school folks see is the data collection aspects and the components of the data entry within the process. So the parent portal, what the parents have access to, are the finished products of the system as it's being generated with the team and members of the planning and placement team. So the parent portal there are notifications that go to parents once documents are finalized. And for example, if a parent needs to sign consent for the initial provision of of the IEP in special education, or consent for an evaluation, there are also mechanisms within the system for the parents to sign those forms digitally, or have them printed out and sign them during meetings, or have them mailed as well. So there's a variety of options for parents to receive the documents, but the interface of the system is definitely different for educators than for parents. but it's designed to meet the needs of each of those important members of the team so that they can contribute to meetings appropriately.
So CT SEDS uses some really cutting edge technology. And that's a good thing. I'm always in favor of technology. I wonder about other states. Do they have systems that are as sophisticated as CT SEDS, or are we leading the pack?
There are definitely other states that have systems that have been rolled out. There are the vendor that we have partnered with is called PCG, Public Consulting Group, and they have statewide contracts for similar systems in, I believe, 10 states. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure there are 10. There might be an 11th. I know they're working with the city of Boston as well. So I'm not sure how that factors into the total. But it's not a new concept, but we certainly designed the system to ensure that it met our requirements for the state of Connecticut and contained the necessary data collections. So I've said this before and very publicly. There were challenges with the system, and those have been, and continue to be addressed. Like all technology, we did anticipate some challenges with regard to the effectiveness and efficiency of the technology, and are working together with our districts and parents to ensure that we're continuously improving the system. So you mentioned there's great potential, and there's many positive components of the new system, but we also know where the pain points are. And ultimately, this is a tool for our schools and districts and educators to do the work efficiently. And we know that it took our educators a significant amount of time to understand and learn the system. And so we've reached out in many different ways to acknowledge the work that has been engaged the year before. And as I mentioned, to look to ways that we can improve moving forward in the future. Because the goal of the system is the output, which is high quality, individualized programming for our students that leads to better outcomes. So that's the goal that we have. There are many advantages in this system, as you can imagine, for statewide data collection. We're required to report to the federal government, the Office of Special Education Programs, on a yearly basis. And this system is designed to really efficiently do that, whereas we used to have to request data from districts. Now we are able to access the data that we need through the system. And so we're excited about that. We're still learning the system ourselves at the state level, and to be able to move forward. So we're just in the beginning stages, still year 2 of implementation, but I am very hopeful and excited for what the future brings.
Excellent. Yes. And, I was wondering, I remember a parent told me back when the new form, the new template was introduced, that she had just gotten to the point where she could understand the old form.
No. And then they change it.
Yeah, now there's a new form.
Yeah.
What kind of feedback are you hearing from parents about the new form?
Yeah, it's been mixed throughout the year, Kevin. We've heard of a lot of positives, but we've also heard some criticism as well. And what we do is we take all the input and consider and reflect upon it, and put it into our. We meet on a regular basis with PCG to look at the information that we receive from our parents, from our educators, and we have a list of priorities of action items that we need to address based on those priorities. But we've received extremely positive feedback on the translation of the IEPs, and districts, the automaticity of that translation is important. Previously districts would have to contract out for those translation services, which would take a great amount of time. We have heard some criticism and some feedback around an optional portion of the IEP, which is the summary page. On our previous IEP document, page 2 used to contain a summary of the meeting notes and recommendations. It was optional, but it was a part of the IEP document itself. And our goal with the new IEP was to really streamline the information contained within. And there is a separate planning and placement team summary document, should the district choose to use that. That is available in the system. But I think we've heard from many parents that they prefer to have the summary included and connected to the IEP itself. But we've, as I mentioned, received a balance of feedback from parents. I think the flow of the information is much easier to understand from what we hear from parents and educators, and having a document that is a portrait versus landscape and all of those things, and how the students' needs flow right into their goals and objectives is, I think, what we hear most often as a positive for the new template.
Yes, I know of parents who are missing the meeting summary, and
yes,
it's good to know that it's available if the school wants to use it.
Yes, it is.
On the other hand, looking from the point of view of an educator, it really isn't necessary to see the summary of the meeting where decisions were made. The outcome and the decisions are a lot more weightier than what happened during the meeting.
Yes, and their recommendations section is included in the document. And what we found is there's a required aspect of the planning and placement team process when a district either proposes or refuses an action in the meeting, called prior written notice. And what we found over time is that much of what was included in the summary really should have been included in the prior written notice to families. So that's been an area of training emphasis for us, and will continue to be, to ensure that our parents and educators and all of our community understand the purpose of the prior written notice, and the importance of that information, and the rights that our students and families have within that process.
Yeah, that prior written notice is important, and it is something that's guaranteed under the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. But still, for an educator to need to see the prior written notice, that again, it's the outcome of the meeting and the decisions that are made that are a lot more relevant. I have to tell you, I don't know how many, quite a few parents, as they received their new IEP form and their separate document with the prior written notice. I got a lot of calls last year asking me, what is this prior written notice form that I'm getting? And I had to explain that you've always been getting it. But it is an important part of the system, and from a legal point of view, it is entirely appropriate.
Yeah, and there's a lot of confusion around the concept. When, like I said, the district refuses or proposes an action, and we've generated a few documents to assist, but we know there's more work to be done. And with that training and with that support, and you're absolutely correct. It used to be in the previous document, page 3, what was known as page 3. And now we really made a concerted effort for our new document to contain sections and not pages, again, with that flow, and then the removal of the prior written notice to a document in and of itself. And so, it's as you're hearing, and have experienced in the feedback that you've received, it was a significant change, that we're all working through together. And so we acknowledge that, appreciate that, and look to this, for this to be a foundation to move forward to ultimately improve the outcomes for all of our students.
Yeah, I like the idea of sections instead of page numbers. Although I'll have you know, I put a lot of effort into memorizing those page numbers and what was on each page. And
They'll probably be ingrained forever, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll take it to the grave. So, you heard my opening remarks about the shortage of teachers and paraeducators that we're experiencing. What are you hearing from school districts at the Bureau about their ability to follow up on their IEP commitments, considering this shortage? What are they telling you at the Bureau?
Well, we know the staffing shortage for sure is it's a huge challenge and a huge concern in our state and actually across the country. I know you mentioned other states as well that we're not alone in this and what we're facing. We're trying to understand the concern. It's not a new issue. It's was highlighted, I believe, and exacerbated a bit, throughout the pandemic. And the pressures and that our educators are under with all the requirements that they have and the pressures of educating our youth. And I think there's a variety of ways to address the issue. There's recruitment and retention efforts that are happening. You mentioned some of the strategies that the state is engaged in. But one of a very effective measure that we've had is reciprocity across states. So our talent office worked with the leadership team under the leadership of Commissioner Russell Tucker to allow for educators who are certified in other states from Maine down through Virginia to have reciprocity in Connecticut. And that generated a significant amount of new teachers into our system that would have normally been a barrier in the past. So that's one very effective strategy. The recruitment and retention and alternate routes to certification. One point that I want to make is the federal law is very clear that the requirements for highly qualified for special education cannot be they cannot be waived or reduced in any capacity. So a lot of the flexibilities that were provided to alternate routes and temporary alleviation of requirements did not apply and could not apply to special education certifications. And so that's a good thing, in that we need and want highly qualified individuals in front of our students that are eligible for special education. But it also poses some challenges logistically for districts who are looking for strategies to be able to add to the workforce rather than restrict it. And so we've been working within that context to create programs, next generation programs that have been very effective. And we've also invested in a special education employment website that is specifically for our school districts to place job openings for related service providers, special ed teachers, and paraeducators. And we've seen some really great success with that site. There's social media and marketing of the vacancies that happens on behalf of the districts. And there's been just over 600 positions that have been filled through the use of that mechanism. Now, that doesn't resolve issues of educators moving from one district to another. And so that's something that we need to think about, again, with the pipeline of our teachers and really instilling the as a state and as an agency, the importance of and the support for going into education and the importance of that field. And so we can't talk about shortages also without thinking about salaries and so forth and all those different things. But, our special educators are so critical to the effective implementation of our programming. And so there's a collaborative, interdependent effort happening at the state and the local level to try to address this issue. So, I mentioned the website as an example. It's not a silver bullet necessarily, but it is a tool that we've invested in that has shown some benefit. But the State Department of Education just recently did a survey, which many of our districts responded to get a current status of the vacancies. And it's probably no surprise to you that special educators and paraeducators in special education are a large percentage of those vacancies.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I remember about 20, 25 years ago, it seemed like there was a shortage of teachers, not as critical as it is now. But there was a shortage, and then over the couple of years, about the same time as No Child Left Behind was enacted, there seemed to be too many teachers, and there were teachers who were involuntarily leaving the profession, or future teachers who changed course and went on to other professions. This shortage of teachers, everyone is saying it's not going to go away overnight. We'll be living with it for a while. Bryan, what's your opinion? Is this going to be a problem for the long term, or are these efforts going to minimize the problem and get us back to normal soon?
Yeah, I mean, the back to normal, I'm not sure. It's hard to know what that level is. I know, we're working around the clock nonstop on the issue. It's front of mind at the State Department. It's front of mind for our districts. I know directors that are not sleeping because because of some of the vacancies that they have, and just pulling out all of the tools and the resources they have to try to fill the vacancies. So, it's hard to predict what will happen in the future. There's so much unknown there, but I know this is a priority, and it's something where, I believe we could resolve any issue when we work collaboratively with our school districts, with our policymakers, with our higher education partners, and of course our parents and families on behalf of our students. Our students are why we do what we do. So if there's a challenge in front of us, I believe we can address it sooner rather than later. But this is not a simple problem that has a simple solution. So starting from the federal government all the way down, we need to work together and collaboratively to address the situation. But what we advise districts is, if you have a vacancy in your district, please contact and communicate with your parents. Let them know the vacancy exists. Document your efforts to fill that position. And then if there are any services that are impacted, ensure those are documented with a plan to make up the services that were lost for students. And so that doesn't solve the issue, but communication and transparency in these processes is really critical to ensuring that we're all working together to address and to solve it. But yeah, so I'm optimistic. I'm a half glass full guy, Kevin, but this is a serious problem that needs immediate attention.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, I appreciate your candor on that. So, Bryan, both of you, I'd like to thank you for joining me on this edition of Answers. And I wish you both the best of luck in the future.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I appreciate the invite. Bryan, it was a pleasure. Bryan with an I.
Yeah, it was great meeting you as well. And I also really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, and we will return in October with another edition of Answers as the journey continues. Thanks, everyone. Bye.